welcome. You are our key speaker here. And you've heard from two academics who have a lot of high-minded words to say, but you're the one. Thank you. But you're the one who actually goes to the legislature and gets things done. And you passed free speech on campus 1, shall we call it, 2 sessions ago, with some significant resistance, largely from what I call the education industrial complex, but you passed it nonetheless. You are a lot better at negotiating those channels than I am, and you were able to get past that and pass this bill. But then last session, you weren't able to pass essentially this bill. Why do you think you can now, and why is it worthwhile to do so?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I don't know if it'll pass now. And the first bill, I think, was inside and outside. And one of the first things we agreed to was to not have it inside, because the higher ed folks say, well, it's much more difficult to have free speech inside. You can agree or disagree, but as a legislator, you're trying to pass a bill. So we passed it outside and thought we'd come back and pass it inside. And just to give a little background here, when I was presenting the bill to the committee, by looking at their faces, like I'm looking at yours now, I could tell some weren't interested and it wasn't going to pass. So rather than spend 2 hours doing this, I just said, look, I'm going to pull it down and consider amendments. Since then, went to UCA and met with the teachers and faculty at UCA. I went to U of A last week. I'm coming here this week. Hopefully I'll be at Arkansas State University, because I wanted to hear from students. And I heard a lot from students on what it looks like and free speech looks like on campus. And just to relay to you, or to rehearse to you, some of the things that were said, one of the big ones that came up was campus elections. That there really aren't any guidance or guidelines for how campus elections, we talked about this earlier, passing out food and giving out posters, and how there's really no guidance on that other than what the administrations, and I'm not speaking about here only, talking about around the state, what administrations say you can and can't do. Can you put up posters? Can you set up a table? Can you do those kind of things? A young man at U of A said, up there it gets real cold, and it was real cold last week. And they said, what do I do if I want to pass out pamphlets? I can't do that unless the university tells me. So a couple of real important things in this bill. For inside, you have to have additional protections. And one of the things that we did was and of course Robert has been instrumental in helping this, and Josh also, in these bills. My co-sponsor from the student has been very helpful in doing this also. But we want to strike that balance. And the way we tried to strike that was to allow for time, place, and manner. So the university can have some restrictions over the time you do it, the place you do it, and how you do it. So if they don't want you walking up and down in the classroom and protesting classroom, you can't do it. Now you may have a minor disruption, like if somebody goes, ah! All the kids in Fayetteville jumped. So if you have a minor disruption, get on past it. You can live with it, right? Not now. But, so those minor disruptions are allowed, but you can't disrupt the class. Another big one, we're at the time when we had one of the professors at one of the universities said, well, I can't, if I teach English, and if I have a student using y'all, you probably don't hear that here, but if somebody uses y'all and I grade them down, this bill prevents me from grading them down on that. We don't think so. We talked today. I've asked the Attorney General for an opinion on that, so we'll wait for the Attorney General's opinion to come out on that, but I don't think it does. It's just kind of ridiculous to think if you're teaching English and somebody uses poor grammar, you can't grade them down. That seems like a duh. But I'm not an attorney, and attorneys get to can help determine duh. But those are some of the things that we want to do with this bill, is extend free speech onto campus. If you did an internet search, you might look up on your phone about students being removed from class. You'll find by far they're removed over just a couple of things. One is pronouns, gender identification, religious views, abortion, those kind of things, marriage. That's what you see students who oppose a professor, the professor will ask them to leave. That's kind of what Rob was talking about with all the names. It came up the other day, a young man stood up and said, what about if drag shows, if they want to have a drag show on campus with Senate Bill 48? You may have been watching that when it's about drag shows and exposing young children to sexual activity or to sex. The response to that is this bill protects that. If you want to dress however you want to dress, whatever you want to do, if you don't cause a disturbance, go ahead. That's why we have liberals and conservatives both agree on this. It's free speech. We're not going to stop that. If you want to put up a poster that says we're having a drag show at blah, 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 and right next to it says rally against abortion, rally pro-abortion. Whatever that says is free speech as long as the university is allowing posters to be put up on there. And the university can't stop you from doing that. And you know, the argument from universities is, look, we're doing a good job. And this disruption stuff can be really hard. You know, they have on campus keggers, except in our dry counties. They have keggers, they have huge parties, they have people on dope walking around campus and going into the libraries and doing different things. They seem to be able to control that pretty well. They have big football games and pep rallies and all the things going on. They can control that pretty well. So why don't we have a bill that allows that to happen? And I'm getting ready to go to you next, so get ready. So when the first bill came up, we asked ASU, and they did a great job, Ashland did a great job talking with the university, working with them, and they essentially said, don't sue us. Let's work it out, right? And we said, no. Or she said, no, we're going to court. Then the universities did a great job working with us, and I really appreciate that. They sat down and we worked through a lot of things and finally settled on something we could agree on to pass. But they asked that we pass the bill before they changed their policies. That's reasonable. Run legislation, pass the legislation, we'll develop the policy based on the legislation. All we're doing here is saying free speech is controllable, you can do it, here's the legislation, create your policy around this legislation, and we'll all move forward. Look forward to hearing what you think about free speech inside at that time.
Thank you, Senator. Ashland, as I mentioned, Ashland Hogarth was the named plaintiff in a very important free speech case in which she really brought about landmark law in which Justice Thomas repeated the determination of the Eighth Circuit that indeed the actions of the university were unconstitutional and were unlawful. And Justice Thomas even questioned whether our notions of qualified immunity should apply in such a circumstance, because we know qualified immunity more aptly in the context of emergency decisions, like when police officers have to make snap judgments. Indeed, that analogy he gave. So Ashland, I'd like you to talk initially about your case. Just tell us briefly what happened and what motivated you to pursue the case as a young college student, and then any other thoughts you may have.